The desert sun beat down mercilessly as I crouched behind a sand dune, peering through my binoculars at the enemy positions in the distance. It was 1943, and we were in the thick of the Tunisian Campaign. The Allies had finally turned the tide, and we were on the offensive, determined to push the Axis forces out of North Africa once and for all. Our orders were clear: advance quickly, strike hard, and leave no room for the enemy to regroup. General Montgomery had devised a bold plan to outflank the Germans and Italians, cutting off their supply lines and forcing them into a corner. The air was filled with the roar of engines as our tanks and armored vehicles surged forward, kicking up clouds of dust that hung in the hot, dry air. As we moved, the landscape around us was dotted with the remnants of previous battles. Burned-out tanks, shattered artillery pieces, and the scattered debris of war told a grim story of the fierce fighting that had taken place. But now, the momentum was ours, and we were determined to press our advantage. The initial clashes were intense. The Axis forces, though battered and weary, fought with the desperation of cornered animals. Our advance units reported heavy resistance as we approached their defensive lines. Machine gun fire and mortar shells rained down on us, and the crack of rifles echoed across the dunes. But we pressed on, our spirits buoyed by the knowledge that victory was within our grasp. One of the key moments came during the battle for the Kasserine Pass. This strategic location was crucial for controlling the supply routes, and both sides knew its importance. We launched a coordinated assault, with infantry and armor working together to overwhelm the enemy positions. The fighting was fierce and chaotic, with explosions shaking the ground and smoke filling the air. I remember vividly the moment we breached their lines. Our tanks rolled forward, blasting through enemy bunkers and scattering their defenders. We advanced through the narrow pass, engaging in close-quarters combat as we cleared out the remaining pockets of resistance. The Axis soldiers, realizing they were outnumbered and outgunned, began to surrender in droves. As we pushed deeper into Tunisia, the pace of our advance increased. The German and Italian forces were in full retreat, their morale shattered and their supplies running low. We encountered hastily abandoned camps and makeshift defenses, evidence of their desperate attempts to delay our progress. But nothing could stop us now. The final push came as we approached the port city of Tunis. This was the last major stronghold of the Axis forces in North Africa, and capturing it would mean the end of their presence on the continent. We launched a massive assault, with air support pounding their positions and our ground forces closing in from all sides. The streets of Tunis turned into a battlefield as we fought house to house, clearing out snipers and machine gun nests. The enemy's resistance was fierce, but we were relentless. I remember the moment we raised the Union Jack over the city, a symbol of our hard-won victory. In the days that followed, we rounded up thousands of Axis prisoners, their once proud armies now reduced to a beaten and demoralized remnant. The sense of triumph was overwhelming, but it was tempered by the knowledge of the cost. Many of our comrades had fallen in the struggle, and the scars of battle would stay with us forever. Looking back, the Tunisian campaign was a testament to the determination and courage of the Allied forces. We had faced a formidable enemy and emerged victorious, paving the way for the liberation of Europe. The memory of those days in the desert, the camaraderie of my fellow soldiers, and the sight of the enemy's final defeat will stay with me always. Our days in the Tunisian desert were marked by hardship and resilience. The heat was relentless, and the sand seemed to get everywhere, making even the simplest tasks a challenge. We had to constantly keep our equipment clean and functioning, a difficult task with the fine desert dust clogging up everything. Our rations were basic, and water was always in short supply. Yet, despite these conditions, morale remained high. We knew that every step we took brought us closer to victory. One day, as we advanced towards a small village, we encountered stiff resistance. The Axis forces had dug in, using the buildings and surrounding terrain to their advantage. The battle was fierce, with our troops engaging in intense firefights as we slowly pushed forward. I remember taking cover behind a crumbling wall, bullets whizzing past my head, and the deafening sound of explosions all around. We had to move from house to house, clearing out enemy positions with grenades and close-quarters combat. The fighting was brutal, but we were relentless. Slowly, we gained ground, forcing the enemy to retreat. By nightfall, the village was in our hands, and we set up defensive positions, preparing for a possible counterattack. The night was long, and sleep was impossible with the constant threat of another assault. The following days saw more of the same. We advanced steadily, encountering pockets of resistance that we had to overcome. Each battle was a test of our endurance and resolve, but we never wavered. Our commanders kept us focused on the bigger picture, reminding us that every victory, no matter how small, was a step towards the final goal. As we neared Tunis, the fighting grew even more intense. The Axis forces knew that this was their last stand, and they fought with everything they had. The city itself was a maze of narrow streets and fortified buildings, making it difficult for our tanks and armored vehicles to maneuver. We had to rely on infantry tactics, moving cautiously and using cover wherever we could find it. I will never forget the moment we finally broke through the enemy defenses and entered the heart of Tunis. The sense of accomplishment was immense, but it was also bittersweet. We had lost many good men along the way, and the cost of victory was heavy on our hearts. In the aftermath of the battle, we worked tirelessly to secure the city and round up the remaining Axis forces. The sight of defeated German and Italian soldiers, many of them just as weary and worn as we were, brought home the reality of war. We were all just men, fighting for our countries, caught up in a conflict that seemed to have no end. The Tunisian Campaign was a turning point in the war, and being a part of it was an experience that shaped me forever. The bonds I formed with my fellow soldiers, the courage and determination we showed, and the triumphs and losses we shared will always be a part of me. As we prepared to move on to the next phase of the war, we knew that we had proven our strength and resilience, and we were ready to face whatever came next.